So let's resume. Good morning. On behalf of the panel on economic development, I would like to welcome the public officers as well as the deputations for attending today's meeting. This is about the future development of the electricity market in Hong Kong. You may want to put on the earpiece if you need interpretation service. Channel 0 for floor, Channel 1 Cantonese, Channel 2 English, and Channel 3 Putonghua. I would like to remind attendees that other than electrical members and also specified public officers in attendance, your written submissions as well as the speech that you make at the meeting, you will not be protected by the privileges and exemptions under the Electrical Powers and Privileges Ordinance. I would like to introduce to you the public officers in attendance. Mr. Wong Kim Sing, Secretary for the Environment. Mr. Vincent Liu, Deputy Secretary for the Environment. Mr. Donald Ng, PAS for the Environment. Mrs. Dorothy Ma, PAS for the Environment. Ms. Esther Wang, PAS for the Environment, as well as Mr. Alan Chow, Chief Electrical and Mechanical Engineer from the Environment Bureau. I'd like to give the floor to the deputations and individuals. You may speak one by one. Each of you will get 4 minutes. First of all, I'd like to give the floor to Professor Chow. Oh, sorry, he's not in the chamber. So next, Mr. Wen. Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, Secretary. Good morning, members. The administration has issued this public consultation document about the future development of the electricity market, and I speak in the capacity as the representative of the Safety Electrical Consulting Limited. We all know that electricity supply is very important to the development of a society. Without adequate and reliable electricity supply, financial and economic activities cannot prosper. Hong Kong is densely populated. We have also got a densely built environment. As part of the electricity sector, we all understand that the electricity systems and the transmission network are very complicated. We can't say that we didn't have blackouts in the past, but quite unlike the case in overseas countries, we don't have to suffer from blackouts whenever there is inclement weather. So we haven't seen major blackouts for a long time. So we can see that this is evidence to show that the operation of the electricity industry is commendable, but of course it is subject to the government's monitoring. We agree that the society has to progress forward, and we must be forward-looking. Regarding the future development of our electricity market, I agree that there should be a discussion about areas for improvement, but we shouldn't just be changing for the sake of changing. Otherwise, we'll be destroying the proven mechanisms, and then at the end of the day, only the public will suffer. So I just want to give some broad ideas. First of all, we need to understand the characteristics of our electricity market. If we are to introduce any change, it should be for the sake of the interests of the public as well as the sector. We cannot compromise the high degree of reliability when it comes to electricity supply in Hong Kong. Certainly, for overseas liberation examples, we need to look at different examples. For those failures, we have to find out why they have failed, and we shouldn't repeat their mistakes. We mustn't think that introduction of competition will naturally drive down the tariff rates. It may go up as well. For the development of our electricity market, we shouldn't just look at the tariff rates. We should be looking at broader issues like safety, reliability, and environmental protection. The livelihood of the industry participants should also be given due weight. When it comes to the development of renewable resources, we should be pragmatic, and we should understand the constraints imposed by our land as well as the natural resources. I think we should try as much as possible to make use of the waste-to-energy facilities in government projects, and then we can increase the ratio of RE and reduce carbon emission. From the commercial point of view, the power companies are privately run. You get 10 more seconds. Please finish your speech. Reasonable return is the important factor driving their investment. So I just want to say that there should be more rational discussion about this matter, which will impact upon our livelihood and the social and economic development of Hong Kong. Next, Mr. Ho. I'm glad to hear that the administration has been very frank. That is quite uncommon, is that there has been unanimous view from the public that we don't agree to purchase more electricity from the mainland. I just hope that we have the same sort of mainstream thought for political reform package. We have seen the conflict and tension between the mainland and Hong Kong. Like the case of Siu Yau-wai, it has caused a lot of tension. So I hope that the Sen will once and for all tell us that the idea of buying more electricity from the mainland will be dumped. Now, Mr. Wong is supposed to oversee water supply, and yet Mr. Paul Chan, the Secretary for Development, is negotiating the agreement. In fact, Shenzhen and Dongguan is buying water at a price much lower than we get it from the mainland, 6 or 7 times difference. So we are subsidizing the mainland authorities, and yet we are not getting the best quality. So I'm afraid that when we buy electricity from the mainland, it's just like buying water from the mainland, and it will undermine our governance. I appreciate the sense of frankness. That is, in many overseas countries, they have been able to liberalize the market when they privatize national enterprises, and so they have been able to improve the efficiency, and they're able to lower the tariffs. But then after the liberalizing process has been completed, it's been seen that the tariff rates have been going up gradually. Now, under the British Hong Kong rule, town gas supply, say, for example, has always been in the hands of private companies. So we should treasure these characteristics. Now, if the rate of return is to be cut drastically, 5% in the first instance, another 5%, another 5%, I think we need to consider preserving what we have got. In many advanced cities and countries, they have higher tariff rates than Hong Kong, and yet our reliability is much better. Recently, we know that Macau, which hasn't been relying on the mainland for electricity supply, has experienced blackouts. Just imagine the impact on our financial market if there is a blackout when the Hong Kong Exchange is still in operation and trading. For us, Momentum 107, we are not using public money to subsidize the power companies. If we are to liberalize the market, we may run the risk of having the need to subsidize the electricity market. I was just next door talking about retirement protection, and then we've been told about the structural deficits. Now, in Australia, the labor market usually have policies that would help the rich because they are the class that can get the subsidies in terms of environmental protection. Mr. Choi, I would like to address the panel, and I want to say that we need to focus on the following points. That is, we should encourage more demand-side management. We should balance safety and reliability, affordability, and environmental protection. We should encourage greater use of RE. I think it's important to make sure that we recognize that electricity is important for our livelihood, our daily lives, and economic development. I agree with the policy objectives of the government, and we hope that we can understand that the SCA has already got requirements concerning energy conservation and energy audits, but of course the government can do more in this regard. Moreover, with the advancement of technologies, many appliances have become smart appliances, and the AMI has been introduced in many places. I think in this way we can help to reduce the peak demand. Understand that both companies are hoping to carry out tests on the AMIs. I hope this can be rolled out in the entirety of Hong Kong. For us, we were set up in the year 2000, and we hope that other than safety and reliability, we should also emphasize that the citizens have a good habit. I think we should start with education. For energy conservation, we should teach our young so that they know clearly what this is all about. And in fact, we can cooperate with the power companies concerning energy conservation so that the young people can have good habits, and then they can bring the message home and promote the idea among their family members. As to the question of renewable resources, Hong Kong is a small place, and there are many constraints, and we mustn't overlook the question that it is more costly. Well, in fact, in overseas countries, RE users will usually get some subsidies.
And if the government goes by that approach, it should tread carefully, because unfairness may be created, because members of the public may be asked to subsidize users of renewable energy. Overall speaking, I hope that the government can adopt different measures to strike a balance among the different elements in energy supply, reliability, safety, and environmental protection. And the power companies should be encouraged to use RE and generate electricity in a green way to develop Hong Kong as a sustainable society. Dr. Zhou Chin-ho. Thank you, Chairman. The government is consulting us on the development of the electricity market. There are 4 energy policy objectives: safety, reliability, affordability, and environmental protection. These are the 4 objectives. And the 2 power companies are doing excellent job in these 4 aspects. So, because of this, I agree that the present regulatory mechanism should be maintained. Second, many people in Hong Kong ask for bringing in competition, as if competition will necessarily bring along progress. But if you look at the characteristics of Hong Kong's power market, competition is not feasible. First, Hong Kong's market is very small. The total installed capacity is only 1,200 MW. And there are already 2 companies. Going by overseas experience, if there is effective competition, there should at least be 4 to 5 companies before effective competition can be realized. So this is one constraint. Some of the people say that we can import electricity from the mainland, but there are difficulties. In the last consultation exercise, a majority of the respondents expressed worry about reliability of supply of that approach. Some people ask other players from around the world be introduced. A third company should be introduced. Is a third company interested? Would there be any third company interested? Hong Kong is a major international city, and you have to find a space to build a third plant. Then it's very difficult. Residents don't want obnoxious facilities to be built in their neighborhood. We should also take a look at the liberalization of other markets in the world. We couldn't find one country based on the 4 criteria we said that has done well in all these 4 aspects after liberalization. There is no one single successful example overseas. Many companies know how to manipulate the supply of electricity, and in other countries, in the initial few years after liberalization, tariffs go down, but then after that, tariffs go up again. In the UK and the US, they are the ones which have liberalized the market the earliest. And in many states in the US, no liberalization has been implemented yet. Not even half of them have liberalized. And 7 states have found great problems in the liberalization, and so they are now going back in their approach. In the UK, the situation is rather complicated. Overall speaking, after liberalization, the tariffs have not gone down. But then the reserve capacity has been lowered substantially. Only 2% power reserve is maintained. So if one major generating unit runs out of order, there are great problems. And in the UK, because the lowest bidder gets the contract, and that is how they go about in introducing competition, and as a result, the reliability of supply is compromised. So overall, I would say that the present regulatory mechanism should continue. Next, Mr. Wong Kun Wai. Thank you, Chairman. I'm from the Changsha Wan Kai Fong Welfare Association. I would like to speak on behalf of the association on the development of the electricity market. We have the following points to make. The first one, the utmost concern of electricity supply in Hong Kong is reliability. Well, several deputations have already said this. In Hong Kong, the reliability of power supply in Hong Kong is very good, on a par with international standards. We should have a reliable source power supply, and that's very important to Hong Kong's development. It can enhance our competitiveness and support our long-term development. Second, tariff. It should be affordable and reasonable. compared to other international cities. Tariffs in Hong Kong are on the low side. Third, environmental protection. Of course, everyone should take part in environmental protection. Hong Kong has done a lot of things to cut down emissions. We should also develop renewable energy. Well, but then it might not, there isn't much that Hong Kong can do on that front. We should look at our own conditions, and we should not just be protecting the environment for the sake of environmental protection. We should try to strike a balance between tariff and environmental protection considerations. Next point is on the liberalization of the market. Just now somebody mentioned about whether liberalization of market will lead to lowering of tariff. Well, we have reservations on that suggestion. Overseas examples have shown that this may not be the case. I'm not going to repeat it here, as many have said this before. For Hong Kong, we are very special. If we are to liberalize the market, the only source of supply for us is the mainland. So we are just talking about single source, and it, in fact, is not genuine liberalization. So the government should consider carefully on whether to liberalize the market. We are now having this scheme of control, SCA, and the mechanism has worked well in the past few decades. We've got reliable power supply. The service is excellent. The tariffs are reasonable. And under this scheme, the government can monitor effectively the power companies, and the tariff rise has all along been moderate, and we have got a reliable supply. So for want of a better model of power supply, we should not casually change our present regime. So our association supports a local generation option, and only by doing this we can monitor effectively the power companies' work, ensure reliable source of supply, and maintain affordable price levels, and do good environmental protection. So your time's up, Mr. Wong. Next one, Mr. Kong Kwok Wai. Thank you, Chairman. Secretary, I am from the Zhengzhou Chinese Chamber of Commerce. I have been a district councillor for 21 years. Earlier, our chamber has discussed this topic. We have two major points to make. One is environmental protection, and second has to do with reliability of power supply. In the past few decades, the government has responded to calls for environmental protection worldwide, and we, as members of the public, have a duty to take part in protecting the environment. The Secretary have been talking about separation of waste at source, and also doing away with the use of plastic bags so that we can be more environmental friendly. This is all very right. We have to pay attention to costs as well when we talk about environmental protection. How can we do a better job? I think Hong Kong people should develop the habit of saving energy. Coming back to Zhengzhou, the situation there, we all agree that this is a tourist destination. We've got good beaches. We've got various types of festivals, and tourists like to frequent Zhengzhou. Tourists from abroad and local tourists alike. If we don't have a reliable power supply, and if there is a blackout, people will complain, and Hong Kong's reputation will also be harmed. On the subject of energy conservation, the report mentions about the greater use of natural gas, which will drive up costs. It will be more expensive than coal. Well, I think the two power companies should follow the advice of the government. A professor just mentioned about the reliability of Hong Kong's power supply. I think we rank very high among different countries in that aspect. It would be very difficult to liberalize the market because it will be difficult to find land to build a plant. We already have great difficulties in identifying land plots for building housing. And if we are to build a plant, there will be a lot of problems. I want to say something about blackouts. In Changchao, there used to be a dedicated electricity company supplying power to Changchao. They did a bad job until when CLP took over. We invested a lot. Well, the tariff has been reduced from $2 million to $1 million since the CLP started supplying power to Changchao. The reliability level has been considerably enhanced. We used to have a lot of blackouts in Changchao. This is a very good example of the job that CLP has been doing. So I think we should maintain the present regime. Next, Mr. Wong Yu-hon. Thank you. I'm from the Sha Tin District Council. I'm from the Civic Power and the New People's Party. I've been meeting with the Secretary a lot this year. The gentleman said that environmental protection has to do with the spending of money. And, well, there will be a ceremony to be held in Sha Tin on environmental protection soon. I will have further exchanges with the Secretary later on. And because of money concerns, environmental protection initiatives have not been implemented smoothly. Now, coming back to the electricity market, I agree with many who said that Hong Kong is an international city, financial center, and it's very important that we have a reliable power supply. And we should not be losing our reliability because we want to liberalize the market. The professor said that we don't have the right conditions to liberalize the market. And also, the tariffs for households are on the low side. It's around $1 to $1.1 for every kWh. And in Singapore, is like $1.6 per unit. So I don't think that tariffs will go down if we liberalize the market. My personal concern is more on the fuel mix. The government seems to give up the idea of purchasing power from the mainland. And many people in Hong Kong would like to have electricity generated locally to ensure reliability. Another important thing is that we should not be switching our focus to the mainland. And if we are to generate electricity in the mainland, it's difficult for us to oversee what kind of fuel they would be using. So we welcome that the government's giving up the idea of purchasing power from the mainland. And I also hope that the EPD can do something more by telling us which fuel is cleaner and more reliable. Nuclear energy. Some found it to be dangerous, and there has been a lot of opposition. But nuclear energy is relatively cleaner and more reliable. And I hope that the EPD can do more work on that front and convince people that nuclear energy is not that dangerous. With regard to fuel mix, RE may take up a certain percentage together with coal. But then RE and coal are two extreme types of fuel. Coal is cheap, but it is very polluting. But then on the other hand, RE is more expensive, but very much cleaner. So the EPD should break down the two figures. They should not be lumped together, the two sources of fuel, or else we will not be able to see whether we are having a cleaner environment or we are spending less or what. So I think the EPD should do something more to break down the figures. People are also concerned about tariff hikes. The EPD should also make sure that there should be cleaner fuel, but they should also make sure that the tariffs are reasonable. Next one, Mr. Yun Hoi Man. I'm from the DP, Democratic Party. All along, Hong Kong lacks long-term and sustainable energy policies. The government has been playing a passive role. It's difficult for it to monitor the utilities companies, electricity companies, town gas, and so on. It doesn't make long-term planning for Hong Kong's energy development. So when the SCAs expire in 2018, the government should take the opportunity to map out a long-term energy policy. There are two aspects. First, we should ensure that the power supply is safe, reliable, and affordable. Second, we should make preparations to liberalize the market. It doesn't mean that we should liberalize at once, but we should at least make certain preparations. With regard to safe, reliable, and affordable power supply, we have to cut down emissions. So natural gas should take up 50% of the fuel mix in 2020. If we maintain the status quo and don't sign new contracts, we would very much rely on the west to east pipeline for supply of natural gas, but it's very costly, and the pipeline costs are very exorbitant. Even if fuel costs are dropping, we still have to bear these very high pipeline costs. So the DP think the government should take the lead in or ask the power companies to purchase natural gas from other countries and also liquefy natural gas from other countries. If we want more supply of natural gas, we have to build more receiving terminals and so on. Can we build some mobile stations in sea, at the sea, so that we can buy natural gas from other countries like the US and so on, and we have the bargaining power. We should not be asking the two power companies to build such stations, because that will enable the power companies to net more profit under the SCA and the rate of return mechanisms. So we can get more reliable source of supply, and then the increase in cost will not be passed on the consumers. Also, the government should set up an energy commission to monitor the operations of the two companies and to map out long-term energy policies. Second, I talk about making preparations for liberalization. The market should not be immediately liberalized. That would not be realistic or pragmatic. But can we allow certain households who use renewable energy, solar energy, and high wind power that they can actually feed their electricity onto the network.
We should enact legislation so that the two power companies should not be allowed to refuse access to the grid. And if for example, these new entrants can, generate 6 units of solar energy, then they can use 5, and then we can. So there won't be any need for any subsidy. And at the same time, we can, protect the environment. But we have to ensure that the two power companies cannot deny access of such renewable energy to the grid. Next, Ms. Chirk. I represent the FBI Hong Kong. As a member of the food and beverage industry, we have been supplying, gourmet food for consumers, and we have been relying on quality power supply. We would, of course, expect the power supply to be safe and the tariff be reasonable, and the supply be reliable. We are very concerned about the reliability of power supply. The consultation paper points out that our supply reliability is up to 99.9%, which is on par with world standard. We're also concerned about the business cost, so the tariff is very important to us. Under the SCA, the service provided by the two power companies are satisfactory. The government is now proposing that we should introduce competition in the long term for the electricity market. We have an open mind on this proposal, but the government should seriously study whether this will actually help reduce the tariff, improve service standard, and guaranteed give us a guaranteed supply reliability. I think the government should deal with these issues carefully. For the catering industry, we are concerned that there are suggestions that we should introduce a progressive system in order to encourage the business sector to conserve energy. We have a lot of reservations about that. The catering industry is very competitive. Our profit margins are very thin. We are always thinking of ways to reduce costs. We would never waste electricity in order to add to our costs. In other countries, they seldom, introduce a progressive tariff system for the business consumers, because if we did that, it would not be very satisfactory, because eventually the additional costs will be shifted on to the consumers. So instead, we think that we should come up with energy conservation options, such as installing smart electric meters and so on, and providing more information to consumers. That would be more pragmatic. If the government could come up with these right measures, it will actually be beneficial to the industry. Regarding the environment, the government is proposing that we should use more natural gas, and many deputations already suggested that this can help reduce emission. While this is commendable, and developing renewable energy is going to be the future trend, but let us be mindful that it is also very expensive. So, on maintaining a reasonable level of tariff and protecting the environment, I hope the government can strike a proper balance between the two. Overall speaking, the business environment is deteriorating, especially for the catering industry. Tourist numbers are falling, wages are increasing, and so there's a lot of uncertainties facing the catering industry. We think that for the future regulatory regime for the power companies, however they will change, what is most important is that it will not further aggravate our business environment and add to our cost, so that we don't have to face unnecessary risk or losses. Next, Mr. Ho Ching. Good morning, Chairman and Mr. Secretary. Today, we are here to talk about the future development of the electricity market. The administration has considered the consultation on the future fuel mix conducted last year, and the public responded by saying that we should use more natural gas, but the government is now proposing to increase the proportion of natural gas, that is 40% in 2007 to 50% in 2020, in order that we can better protect the environment. generating electricity using natural gas is not the perfect option, because using burning natural gas will create a lot of carbon dioxide, causing pollution. So the power companies must install very expensive desulfurization devices before they can satisfy the environmental standards. Building these new facilities and using clean natural gas, and also installing desulfurization facilities in order to mitigate the environmental damages is a duty of the power companies. However, improving the product and the quality of the service. But the two power companies already have monopolistic positions in the two markets. And the government over the years, for example, signed with the two power companies the scheme of control arrangement in 2008, and also during the review of the SCA in 2013, and given unreasonable concessions to the two power companies. What is most controversial is the way the permitted rate of return is calculated, which is expressed as 13.5% to 15% of the fixed asset value, even though the rate of return has now been reduced to 99%. But the government thinks in the present consultation proposes that we should further reduce the rate of return to 6 to 8%. But to us, this is still on the high side. Furthermore, given that the current prevailing rate of interest is close to 0%, 6 to 8% is already very high, and this is unfair to the consumers. Next, on nuclear energy, if the community, I think we want to address two issues. First of all, the tariffs will need to be cheap, and also in order to reduce emission, the consumers may be willing to pay more. Ever since the earthquake and the nuclear disaster at Fukushima, the government's attitude towards nuclear energy has become more cautious, and the consultation paper has avoided the issue of importing nuclear energy. But the price to pay is that tariffs may go up. So will the government adopt a pragmatic approach? And will the public agree that we should increase the import of nuclear energy? In recent years, the construction of power generating units have been increasing all the time. In 2020, it is expected that there will be 50 nuclear reactors in the neighboring region. Given that the number of nuclear power plants in the PLD region will not go up or go down because of Hong Kong, so for Hong Kong to increase the import of nuclear energy, it will not really add to the risk for Hong Kong. But we must bear in mind that nuclear energy is relatively cheap, and it's also a very stable source of supply. So increasing the import of nuclear energy can relieve pressure on the tariff. Next, Mr. Law Kwun Ping. Chairman and Mr. Secretary, good morning. The government is now consulting the public on the future of the electricity market. We are also very concerned about the future development of the electricity market, and I'm here today to express my views about the future of that market. First of all, I think power company is a private enterprise, and they own the local power generating units, and they build the power generating units. The government has not committed any resources to build the transmission network. Taxpayers have not, paid anything to help the construction of these facilities. Even though taxpayers have not subsidized the power supply system, our supply reliability is much better than other jurisdictions where the power companies are subsidized by the government or owned by the government. Thirdly, for every unit of electricity, the tariff is very low in Hong Kong compared with other countries. The cost per unit of electricity in Hong Kong is about 50% of those of London and New York. Compared with neighboring cities in China, the tariff is comparable to Shenzhen, and Shanghai is even cheaper. So if we've not invested in the construction of power generating plants and so on, in exchange we're getting reliable power supply, and the tariffs are relatively low. To require power companies to make the investments on electricity supply, then a reasonable rate of return is essential. So taxpayers don't have to pay for anything. If the return for a power company is not sufficient, they don't have enough capital to make the investment, then the livelihood of 70 million people in Hong Kong will be affected, and even our international image may be affected. I understand that in the long term we need to protect the environment, but we must deal with the question of cost carefully in order that the electricity tariff will become unaffordable for many people. I think in Hong Kong we can adopt a more progressive tariff system to subsidize low-income households, and also to require those who consume more electricity to have the incentive to conserve energy. On renewable energy, we can consider building more wind farms along the coastal region to generate electricity in order to offset the greenhouse effect. And we can also use windmills and also use it as a tourist attraction to help promote the tourism ministry as well. Next, Mr. Cheung Ching To. Thank you, Chairman. I represent the Sha Tin Commerce and Business Association. As everybody knows, Hong Kong is a major cosmopolitan city. All the major industries and businesses in Hong Kong need to have a reliable supply of electricity. Last year, the government launched the public consultation on the future fuel mix for electricity generation. And the response showed that the public attached importance to reliability of power supply. And also that the public believes that Hong Kong must maintain a quality, power supply standard. There are voices in our community suggesting that we should bring in competition to the electricity market. This is a constructive suggestion. But in the foreseeable future, if indeed we were to introduce competition to the market, we can foresee that the process will be a protracted one. It's going to be very complicated. If we do not deal with it properly, then there will be the serious consequences for the whole of Hong Kong. Our economy and our image may suffer. I believe all of us would agree that over the years, our performance in terms of emission, supply reliability, and energy efficiency, we have been improving all the time. Such achievements are attributable to the efforts of the CLP and the government, and also the fact the government has a perfect system of monitoring the power company. Since the existing mechanism has worked well, I therefore propose that at the moment, we should continue to maintain the status quo. Obviously, we need to move with the times. We have to enhance the system. For example, we can explore the use of renewable energy and improve our performance in terms of emission. As I said before, to bring in competition is a constructive suggestion. And it's also a forward-looking, proposal. If in future the government could come up with a perfect scheme with good justification and to implement the proposal in a progressive manner, I believe the public will support that. On nuclear energy is the cheapest and the safest form of energy, but the public is very much wary of nuclear energy. I suggest that the government and the power companies should conduct more public education events and to educate the public that the nuclear energy is not really that unsafe. I think any investment in power generation is to the tune of billions, and the payback period is very long. So for the power companies to have a reasonable rate of return is only reasonable because the amount of investment required is huge and the payback period is very long. If the investment. If in Hong Kong we no longer generate electricity anymore, then the massive investments made by the power companies would have been would go down the drains. They would become useless. Next, Mr. Long Yiman. Thank you. Regarding the consultation paper on the future of the electricity market, we have two suggestions. First of all, we think the government should come up with ways to promote the development of renewable energy. We should open up the power grids and encourage more organizations to participate in power generation so that we can increase the proportion of electricity generated by renewable energies. The two power companies operate like vertical conglomerates, and they actually monopolize the supply of electricity. Under the existing SCA, the gross profit margin for the two power companies is 11%. And in the absence of competition, I think tariffs are quite expensive. And this is one reason why we are not able to have a healthy development for renewable energy in Hong Kong. In order to achieve any breakthrough, I think we should follow the trend of reform in the international market. We should break up the supply chain, and that we should promote, we should promote distributed power generation. And also we should consider allowing third parties to connect, new players to connect to the existing power grids, and that there should be fair terms to allow new entrants to participate in power supply. We talk about the cost of power generation is very high simply because the cost for any new entrant is very high. So I think we should steadily increase the ratio of renewable energy for power generation so that we can cut down on on relying fossil fuel and coal to generate electricity. Also, in the consultation paper regarding the fuel mix, I think the government is very pessimistic about renewable energy. The consultation paper proposes that renewable energy should make up 20% of the fuel mix, and that 50% should be natural gas. But natural gas relatively is a clean, fuel, but still it is a fossil fuel. And in 2010, the sulfur dioxide and nitrous dioxide and suspended particulates resulting from using natural gas to generate electricity make up 11%, 5.5%, and 3-point-something%, which is a very big percentage. In 2019, if we want to achieve the emission target, sulfur dioxide, nitrous dioxide, and suspended particulates, if we want to reduce it by 48%, 6%, and 30%, then relying only on using more natural gas to generate electricity may not help us achieve that target. We think the government must come up with a long-term plan to develop the use of renewable energy, including the promotion of the development of the market for renewable energy, reducing the use of fossil fuel as the major direction for the development of the electricity market. Mr. Lo CY.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I speak on behalf of the Institution of Dining Art. I represent the dining industry as well as our members. The catering industry is the industry demanding a lot of the use of a lot of electricity, and in fact, electricity payment will account for a large share of our costs. The tariff rates have been increasing all the time, and still a blow to our industry. So our institution also favors the introduction of competition, so that as much as possible we can stabilize the electricity supply and we have reliability. However, while we would like to have competition, we must make sure that there will be improvements in a number of areas. First of all, supply reliability. Hong Kong has a reputation for fine dining. We need reliability so that we can serve our clients good food and a good environment. Therefore, we'll emphasize the reliability of power supply. At the same time, we believe that for the permitted rate of return of 9.99% enjoyed by the two power companies, it is on the high side in the business world. It should be lowered to a level which is regarded as reasonable by both the government and the citizens. In fact, within the regulatory framework, other than the permitted rate of return, we should also have a cap on their tariff rates or their revenue, so as to maintain a reasonable tariff rate. In addition, when vetting the tariff rate adjustment proposals, we should also include an assessment about the fuel cost, so that the power companies won't be switching over. So that the power companies can try to buy cheaper fuel while not polluting the environment. I think we should make good use and better use of RE so as to reduce pollution. Hong Kong is a developed and mature city. We shouldn't lag behind other countries. I think the government should consult the public as well as the industry in relation to the tariff implications when we want to have greener generation. There should be different options available for consultation so that we can see which is acceptable. About the idea of turning waste into energy, it is a good option because we need to reduce waste, and waste to energy would be a solution that can reduce waste and go after clean energy. So I think the government should make sure that there will be a study on the matter, and then we can make it work. I think the government should also consider whether we can make further use of nuclear power. Many people have already said that nuclear power is preferable, and Hong Kong has been using nuclear power for many years. It has always been safe, and the government has also got a good monitoring system. This is a kind of energy which is economic and clean. Therefore, I think we should make greater use of nuclear power while we make sure that the nuclear safety is upheld. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chen Yuming. I'm from the Civic Party. I'm Chen Yuming, and it is said that in 2020, 50% of the fuel mix should be natural gas, 25% nuclear, and then for the rest coal and RE. For the Civic Party, we have reservation about such a fuel mix. We believe that the Bureau should make use of this opportunity to reduce the ratio of nuclear. There should be further promotion of RE. There should be a roadmap and a timetable. And then through the SCAs, I think we need to enforce the law. Now, for the import of nuclear power from Daya Bay, it takes up 22% of the fuel mix. We are taking 80% of the nuclear output from Daya Bay. It was supposed to be temporary, but I'm afraid it is going to be made permanent. In other words, the share of nuclear power in the fuel mix will go up instead of coming down. We are disappointed. We don't think we should have more electricity from nuclear power. Instead, we should encourage community RE facilities so as to replace nuclear. I think the Bureau should have a long-term plan for the development of RE. We believe that an RE plan will make sure that we can raise its share in the fuel mix, and then in 2025 we can then abandon nuclear as a source of fuel. It is said that the CN EXCO will vet the tariff proposals, but then it is not an elected mechanism. And therefore, the Civic Party is of the view that when it comes to tariff reviews, the public should play a role. Say, for example, the proposals should be presented in the form of a piece of legislation for the LegCo's approval. For the electricity market structure and also the tariff rates, I think there should be interconnection of the power grids, and also there should be segregation of the generation and the retail segments. For the rates of return and other things, I think we should lower it to 6 to 8%, as suggested by the consultants. It is good, but then the consultants' report should be made public so that the community can have a discussion and we can better monitor the government. There should be a progressive tariff structure so that we won't have the case of residents indirectly subsidizing the commercial users. In the consultation document, it is suggested that there should be better interconnection of power grids locally and with the mainland. The findings of the public consultation are such that for the option of importing power from South China Power, it is not an idea that is preferable. I don't think we should have this, and the Civic Party would not subscribe to such an idea. Thank you. Next, Mr. Leung Shing-hin. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm Leung Shing-hin from Tung Chung Youth Association. I've got 2 points to make today. First of all, reliability of electricity supply. Second, the use of renewable energy. According to the paper, it is said that in order to develop the local electricity market, there is a suggestion to import electricity. It is said that usually it would be reliable, but when compared with the local grid, I think there is still a difference. Therefore, if we are to import electricity from other places, we will be affected. Hong Kong is a cosmopolitan. We want to have continuous power supply. Government departments, stock exchange, hospitals, residents' homes and offices would all rely on a continuous, uninterrupted supply. A lot of us live in high-rise buildings. Say, for example, the electricity supply is unstable. There may be major blackout. In other words, we'll be trapped in the lifts, and I don't think this is desirable. Therefore, I hope that in future, when the government is to develop the electricity market, and even if there are to be changes to the market, we must make sure that supply reliability should be given paramount significance. And in terms of environmental protection, we favor RE. But of course, we are concerned about the investment of the power companies in REs. We are worried that whether there will be tariff implications if they use RE to generate electricity. And then I'm afraid that they will build solar panels, they will build wind turbines, then that means it will raise the tariffs. I'm afraid that maybe it will only add to the burden of the tariffs. Lastly, in terms of reliability, in terms of RE and other things, the government should be cautious and pragmatic, and we should strike a balance among the different needs and calls so that we can have better development. Thank you. Next, Mr. Chang King Yang. Thank you. In year 2005, introduction of competition and also interconnection were studied by the government. Now, 10 years down the road, we haven't seen any breakthroughs. It has disappointed a lot of us, but still, we need to look forward, and therefore, I would like to make 3 points. First of all, for the SCAs, it is said that power companies can still calculate their rate of return on the basis of ENFA. I believe that it should be changed. The formula should be changed, or the rate of return should be kept. Of course, understand that it will be difficult to implement or enforce. Perhaps the government can opt for the second best, that is, try to get a dedicated department to check whether the power companies are exercising cost control and enhancing operational efficiency. In the future, when it comes to the vetting of tariff proposals, perhaps the government should have input from people's representatives, and then we can have better transparency in this regard. This is in line with our status as a developed city. And we should have a dedicated department to coordinate energy issues. We have the Energy Advisory Committee. It is responsible for giving advice to the government, but then this portfolio is also distributed among a number of government departments and bureaus. But then for the power companies, they are professionals, they're experts. When the government is to argue or debate with the power companies, it is difficult because the power companies will talk about the development of the electricity market and they may disagree with the government concerning the data. Therefore, we should set up an energy commission so that we can study the way forward for energy in Hong Kong. And then for the importation of electricity from mainland, there is resistance. I think this is understandable, but the government should encourage the development of RE at the community level. We've seen that in overseas countries like South Korea and Germany, they always encourage the development of RE at the community level. In some cases, it's quite mature. Hong Kong should catch up, and we should encourage the development of RE. According to an early study, 53% of the citizens agree that if the power companies are to buy electricity from them, then they will be interested in installing RE facilities at home or in their own community. So perhaps the government can consider legislating for the following. That is, the power companies should allow for the interconnection with the power company's grid by the RE facility owners, and in the case of inadequate output, the power companies will supplement. The government should subsidize. Even if not, then there should be incentives to encourage the development of REs. That's all I want to say today. Thank you. Lastly, Dr. Chen King-ming. On behalf of the New Democrats, I have already submitted our views. I'm not going to read out from the script. 2 points to make. First of all, our city is developing rapidly. Our demand for electricity is increasing all the time. We have no choices, and the tariffs are being increased year by year. I know that the government hasn't got any incentives for energy conservation, and the government doesn't encourage RE. In fact, the government would like to have more nuclear power. And in fact, it is not right to encourage the use or the importation of electricity from the South China network. Well, I think not more than 9% of them would like to import more power from the China Southern Power Grid. 20% would not opt for either of the two options. They would like to see more RE instead of choosing between option 1 and 2 of the government's document. I think we should try to liberalize the market domestically, and then only with such an approach can we encourage the use of RE. But what about reliability? I think currently development of RE is on a voluntary basis, and of course the government should work harder in this regard so that small-scale RE generation can break the monopoly. And then there's also one other point, and that's about the SCAs. For the SCAs, 9.99% being a magic figure. Now, the government is saying that even if the permitted rate of return is lowered, the tariff rates cannot come down. But then electricity is a public utility, and I don't think you should have been pegged with any rate of return. In fact, it should be pegged to energy conservation. Say whether there has been a reduction in emission, whether there has been a reduction in the emission of CO2. I think energy conservation should be the decisive factor. Of course, so many citizens are in support of natural gas. We mustn't forget that for natural gas, in fact, it's a monopoly. We have the West-East gas pipeline. It seems that we can only get the gas from mainland. Now, of course, for natural gas, we want to increase the share in the fuel mix from 50% to 60%. But we emphasize the diversification of the sources of natural gas, and then the prices will be capable of being lowered. I think we should look into the implications on the marine parks and the marine reserves when it comes to the natural gas terminals or the pipelines. Only 20% of the interviewees would like to have nuclear power, so we will urge the government to come up with a clear objective of lowering the share of nuclear power in the fuel mix. The Secretary, deputations and individuals have already spoken, so it is time for you to give a reply. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to thank everybody for coming on a Saturday morning to give us your suggestions. It is something closely related to your daily lives.
I have several points to make in response to your views. The consultation will last till the end of this month. We are very happy to hear views from you so that we can plan better ahead. Towards the end of this month, there will be a public consultation forum. We'll welcome you to come, and I will be there to listen to your views as well. With regard to the consultation on the fuel mix, the consultation was conducted last year. Based on your response, we have made certain proposals on the future fuel mix. We will increase the share of natural gas. We will come up with ancillary measures to meet with our carbon reduction target and to improve air quality. For this consultation exercise, we are seeking your views on the power companies' performance operations since the SCAs will expire in 2018. We have come up with several proposals. We have proposed how to further develop natural gas, how to further develop energy-saving facilities, and also what studies we should make or conduct to enable interconnections among the power grids. This is something that we should further consider. Of course, we agree that we should have reliable and safe power supply. And at the same time, we should make sure that the tariff rates are affordable. So this is something that you have given views on. In Hong Kong, tariff rates are on the low side compared with other international cities. We want to further improve air quality, do more on environmental protection. So that's why we propose further use of natural gas, and that would inevitably poses pressure on tariff hikes. We have considered the pressure on the grassroots. For the low consumption households, tariffs have not been increased in the past several years. And our objective is to have reasonable rates instead of the lowest rates of tariffs. Another point of clarification, some deputations have referred to the commercial users and the domestic users. Has there been any cross-subsidy between the two groups? I have clarified in an oral question raised at electrical earlier that there is no cross-subsidy among the commercial users and the domestic users. There have been different tariff structures for them, though. This is something that I would like to clarify. Thank you, Secretary. Members, over to you for asking questions, Albert Chan and also Kenneth Chan. 4 minutes each, please. Mr. Albert Chan first. Mr. Albert Chan. In the last session, I asked a similar question, and that has to do with the three factors affecting electricity development. First is cost effectiveness, i.e. the costs. Second is safety considerations. A lot of people are opposing nuclear energy. And third is environmental protection. What kind of renewable energy should be used? In the 90s, the government started studying these aspects. But with regard to development of renewable energy, Hong Kong is lagging far behind other countries. If you look at Southeast Asian countries, for the 3 to 4 story high buildings, all of them come with solar heaters. Small houses in Hong Kong should have installed such facilities, but I believe that less than 1% of small houses have such facilities. In terms of policies and facilities, Hong Kong is lagging very much behind other countries. Hong Kong doesn't have the stamina to do it either. Deputations, you may be very familiar with RE. If we are to develop further, what can we do? We've been talking about various types, for example, solar energy, wind power, and also hydropower, the tides, making use of the tides to generate electricity. But so far in Hong Kong, there have been just a few wind panels. For example, in South Korea and Seoul, the government has been going all out in promoting renewable energy. So deputations, do you have any views on how to further promote the development of RE in Hong Kong? Who would you like to direct your questions to? Well, they can answer. Well, whoever wishes to answer, please do so. Professor Chow. This member's suggestions are very good, but we must note that Hong Kong is an international city and we lack space. If we have to build solar panels at rooftops, I'm just referring to the small houses, not the high rises. If we want to have solar energy, solar heaters, or if we're talking about small houses, if you want to install solar heaters, well, that has nothing to do with the two power companies. It has to do with the government. It is related to structural safety of the houses, and some government departments have to attend to this. Now, if you want to sell off the electricity so generated, then it's your own decision. I don't think there is a problem. And the point that I would like to make, so, well, please answer to my questions. You don't have to answer other deputations' questions. You have time to do that afterwards. I'm asking, if Hong Kong is to develop RE, how can we do it? Please focus on this. I'm exactly answering your question. If we want to develop RE in a fair manner, the power companies must come up with calculations of other costs. I'm not talking about the power companies. The power companies must provide a backup system. How to charge you on their grid. Well, going by the present approach, well, the people in the urban areas might have to subsidize those in the rural areas. And if that is the case, then electricity tariffs may be very high. Mr. Chen, on RE techniques, such techniques have been developed for over several decades. In Europe, 40 to 50% of the electricity will be coming from RE by 2020 in the EU. So Hong Kong is a zero level. In Hong Kong, we have subsidies for electric vehicles and so on, but how come that we don't have such subsidy for developing RE? I think the government must consider subsidy here. And Professor Chow also mentioned about the backup from power companies. I think there is something wrong with that kind of mindset. If we have to allow such facilities, RE facilities, actually at the CUHK, we can do some solar panels at the glass curtain walls and so on. But then we are not encouraged to do so. So we are just selling off our technique to overseas countries. So we hope that the government can come up with more support policies for the development of RE. I would like to add that I think it doesn't make sense to say that we don't have space in Hong Kong. In Seoul, there is this highway with solar panels, river banks with solar panels as well. It's a matter of whether the government has the determination to do it. If you just count on the two power companies, it will not work. The power companies just want to make a profit. They don't have any intention to do it. I think it's the government which should be doing something. Dr. Kenneth Chan, I'm not a member of this EDP, but I am the vice chairman of the EA panel. And the electricity is comes under the portfolio of the EMB, so I'm here to listen to deputation's views. There are two sessions today. I don't know what's the feeling of the government officials, and I get the impression that the government is just scratching the surface of the problem, and it's not tackling the root of the problem. And the two professors seem to be in the picture, but then for the rest of us, we don't have much knowledge. We talk about nuclear energy. We thought the cost is low, but then you said that was a mistake. And the Eastern District Councillor mentioned about building a nuclear plant in Hong Kong. Does he want to have a nuclear plant in his own district or what? Well, such kind of discussions will not help in our discussions. I think we should have a focused discussion. We should do something to take things forward. We should play our part. So our civic party was suggesting that the electrical should play a greater role in all of these, or else we would be just sticking to the old way of doing things, and then the power companies would ask for a tariff hike, and then we would launch a signature petition to oppose it, and then the government says that they will have a study, and then so on and so forth. Well, we are asking whether the consultant's report can be made public, but then you said no, because it involves sensitive information and so on. Go back and talk to your colleagues. Try to make public information which can help facilitate public discussion. We talk about 6 to 8% permitted rate of return. We can ask for an even lower rate, and then somebody was suggesting that it should be 7 to 9%. So this kind of discussion is going nowhere. This is a very valuable opportunity for us to have this discussion. And if you're just giving us figures without good grounds and basis, then it won't work. The discussions won't work. This is far from desirable. So that's why we should strengthen the role of the LegCo in this discussion. Perhaps we can engage our own independent consultant to look at the situation, and then we can have a rational discussion. Now, on the subject of RE, I understand that the two power companies have RE facilities at the community level. They have done free solar energy assessment for certain districts, but the information is rather incomplete on their website. If we want to discuss how the two power companies can chip in with regard to the development of RE, well, actually, the two companies claim that they have 200 or so RE facilities at the community level, and which have been connected to their own power grids. So it seems that this is something not totally infeasible. This is actually what is happening. So how can we build on on what we have done so far and take things forward further? We should try to increase the ratio of RE in our fuel mix. We are trying to lump RE together with coal. I don't think that's a fair approach. I think we should take that RE out from this mix of RE and coal, and then we can try to promote the further development of RE. And Secretary, please be more committed to work together with the community and do a better job in negotiations with the two power companies on the SCAs, and we can have a more focused discussion in the community. Thank you, Dr. Chen, for your comment. We have spent a lot of effort in preparing this consultation paper. It is quite all-encompassing in its content. Mr. Albert Chen mentioned about RE possibilities, and actually there are several pages on this subject, and it also sets out the measures implemented overseas on how to promote the development of RE. And I hope that the members of the public can take a look at this chapter. And our colleagues are attending various occasions, those organized by the Institution of Engineers and so on. And we do have sufficient information in the paper to serve as a reference for everyone. And we welcome opportunities of face-to-face meetings. And we welcome dialogue, more communication. So there will be a public consultation forum to be held towards the end of this month. Myself and my colleagues will have further exchanges with the public at that occasion. We have set out all sorts of information in the paper too, and we welcome communication opportunities. With regard to RE, our position is this. We would like to discuss with you more on how to facilitate the adoption of such technologies in Hong Kong. The paper says that there were hundreds of such facilities in Hong Kong. They were launched not only just by the two power companies, but also community groups as well. And we want to enhance the interconnections among these facilities and the power grids. Whether the two power companies are refusing entries, access to the grids, I don't think that's the case. Can the threshold of entry be lowered? This is something that we will consider. And also, we are also try to encourage the opening up the access of the grids. And what should be the affordable levels of fees charged? This is something that we should also be discussing. Well, the costs or the tariff may be higher than the conventional modes. How should the costs be shared out? How can the costs or the tariffs be made more affordable? So I welcome views on all these aspects. In the medium term, because of constraints in Hong Kong, the share of RE in Hong Kong cannot be too high, unlike what they are having overseas. In overseas countries, RE is dominated by hydropower and also wind power. In Hong Kong, the conditions are different. Our environment is different. So our share of RE cannot be compared to that in overseas jurisdictions. But then, despite this, we still can move forward. And under the SCAs, how can further RE be further promoted? This is something that we can consider. I understand that you don't want to make open the entire consultancy report. Perhaps you have signed up certain conditions banning you from disclosing the report in full. We're not asking the full report to be made public, but you would be conducting another consultancy study. Please consider providing or making public certain information to facilitate our monitoring of the work. If you can't do that, it's difficult for us to move on with our discussions. Okay, thank you, Member. We will go back and consider this. Mr. Albert Chan. I understand the government's positions on renewable energy in your paper, set out in your paper. Some 20 years ago, we started discussing RE. Initially, we talked about several directions. We talked about making use of the tides and so on. But it's been 20 years now. No progress is seen at all. If we just count on the two power companies, well, we will not be developing RE. In other countries, it's the government which is spearheading the initiatives, which is providing technical and financial support and so on. So we have to strike a balance among the three factors, as I just mentioned. And it involves the government's stance, the people's stance, and also the affordability of Hong Kong public. In Southeast Asian countries, for low rises, they have solar heaters at their rooftops. This is also common. In Taiwan and mainland, this is also the case. And in rural areas in the mainland, rooftop solar heaters are seen everywhere, while Hong Kong is not doing that at all. Can we do something with a policy? For example, say people are only allowed to build small houses as long as they have got the solar heaters on the rooftops. I think the government should break through or should think out of its own or think out of the box and should not just count on the two power companies in developing RE, or else we will be locked will be stagnated in the development of RE. In Southeast Asian countries, 40% of the electricity comes from solar energy. So Hong Kong should do more. We should develop RE. Well, we started discussing RE in the early 90s when Stephen Hsu was the Secretary for Environment. I went down to him to Lamma Island, and we looked at the possibility of solar energy and RE. It's been 20 years now. We are not progressing at all. Well, perhaps we could start with something small first, and then we can come up with a 5-year, 10-year plan, and so on.
It will be really a shame when one talks about Hong Kong's policy regarding renewable energy, because there's no measures at all to develop renewable energy. I hope there could be a positive response from the Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chen. If I may respond in the following way. The paper already mentions that in terms of these renewable energy projects, there are several hundred already in Hong Kong. Of course, you can whether or not the quantity is sufficient is subject to discussion. The Development Bureau and our bureau had updated the green building, policy. The government is leading by example here. And secondly, in our paper, we're saying that we can't just rely on the two power companies to promote renewable energy. Other than the two power companies which can expand the investment into renewable energy, the paper also suggests that through different mechanisms, we can actually build a mechanism, including grid access, including so we hope that we can come up with a new direction. Although the paper focuses on 2 points, but regarding the use of solar energy to produce, hot water, we also have a discussion in the paper because the payback period for such an investment is only a few years. But this may not be directly related to the two power companies, even though we have also mentioned this in our paper. We see, I think objectively, we see that in Hong Kong, the biggest opportunity lies in turning waste into energy. We could do it by way of government projects and also projects, initiated by the community. For example, there are new, experiments that could be tried in major cities, and in Hong Kong, we are also experimenting on that. We've had different views during the two sessions today. I hope you can take all these comments back and consider them carefully. I understand that it requires a lot of skill to actually implement many of the proposals, and whether or not some of the proposals are feasible, whether there are cost implications and so on. I think in Hong Kong we only have used only 6 to 7% of our land for residential development. So how much land do we have? Whether or not land could be used? I think we need to listen to the community. On renewable energy, I think we have a very lengthy discussion today as to how we can convert all these proposals into whether it's in the private residential development or in public government buildings, whether we're talking about solar panels or windmills, how can we come up with the most reasonable and the most economical ways to achieve that objective? I hope you can go back and consider those possibilities. We also need to protect the environment. I've also heard that if you build many windmills on a hill, then it may also be, an eyesore. But anyway, I hope the government can, at the end of the consultation period, give us some answers for the questions which have been raised. So thank you very much once again for attending our meeting this morning. If you have any further submissions that you would like to make, please give them to us after the meeting. So thanks again. Once again, our meeting is now adjourned. Is there any other business that members would like to bring up? If not, then the meeting is adjourned.